Welcome to the Hello Sunday podcast with me, Nikki Hayden. This is the podcast that discusses everything self-development, spirituality and sobriety. And it wouldn't be me without a little sprinkling of humour. Whether you are just starting out on your journey of self-development or have been exploring these topics for years, are completely alcohol-free or just curious about living a more sober lifestyle, this is the podcast for you. Each week, I'll be exploring topics in both solo episodes and with some amazing guest experts. So if you like what you hear, then please subscribe, rate and review. So with that said, let's dive into today's episode. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Hello Sunday. Welcome back, guys. I hope you're all doing good. I hope you're all not melting in this heat wave that we're having in the UK. I say heat wave, actually, the last time I was recording, I think it was beautiful sunshine. Now, it's just classic UK summer. Very, very hot, very, very muggy. You can probably hear, well, maybe you can't actually, but there's a fan on in the background because the poor dog, bless him, is just, absolutely dying. And it's just quite cloudy at the moment. I'm really hoping that we get some more sunshine and that's not our summer. But yeah, I hope you're all surviving. I hope you're all, in fact, I hope you're all doing more than surviving. I hope you're all thriving. That is part of what I'm going to talk about this week, actually. It might be a little bit of a mishmash. There is a topic that I want to cover, but actually there's a few things that have come up this week that I'll probably, mention and come on to. So where have I been? So there's been a couple of things going on that have meant that I've not recorded, not really been in the right headspace or energy levels to record. So first of all, I was poorly. So let's take it back actually. We went to the Fat Duck restaurant, Heston Blumenthal, who is a UK chef. He's very theatrical, I think I spoke about this on the last episode, very creative, very theatrical, very much about the experience rather than just the food. I mean, don't get me wrong, the food was incredible, but we got treated to his taster menu down at his restaurant in Maidenhead and also an overnight stay. It's a good job that my husband's company were paying for it because genuinely, not in a million years would we have paid that amount of money. I think altogether, so the meal each was £350. Then we had the wine pairings. Well, I say wine pairings, it was drinks pairings. And to be honest, there was 2 or 3 of them that I was just like, no. The one was like a rum, which I normally don't mind, but not a whole glass of. One was what was the other one? What do you call it? Sake. Yeah, not for me. It tastes like paint stripper. But anyway, and also I don't drink as much these days, do I? I've kind of gone through phases of not drinking at all, complete sobriety, and then the old me would have been knee deep in that. But yeah, it was nice to have the pairings, but it definitely wasn't what made the meal. It was the experience and the theatre of it all. So yeah, the meal was 350 quid each. The wine pairing was like 140. Then we had, obviously, service charge. I think altogether, for the 2 of us, it came to just shy of £1,200, which is wild, isn't it? I mean, it's an amazing experience, but it's a wild amount of money to pay for one meal. But we're in there for about 4 hours. We sat on tables of 4, so I got to know one of Dean's colleagues and her husband, which was just really nice. They were such a fun couple. So, yeah, absolutely amazing. But whilst we were down there, Dean wasn't too well. He got just a bit of a virus, a bit of a cold virus, and he kindly shared that with me. So we got back from there on the Thursday, and by the Sunday, I was not feeling great. Did the first day of the week working, and then I had to take Tuesday, Wednesday off because it was just, totally wiped me out. So he's had that, I've had that. Then we had my nan's funeral on Monday, last Monday just gone, the 23rd. So, yeah, we said goodbye to my beautiful nanny. Do you know what? It was such a beautiful day. The sun was shining. I wore a dress. I bought a new dress, and I wore a dress that I knew she would like, because she was more ladylike and demure than, you know, she wouldn't have appreciated me wearing something short. So I wore like a calf length, like A-line, sort of black taffeta dress. It was gorgeous. Lace gloves that she'd given me, and wore my hair up, and the whole kind of look was just very Nan. I knew that she'd appreciate it. And I carried her coffin with my brother and my 2 uncles. I did a reading all about her and the funny stories that we remember from her and all the things that she used to say and do. And it was a really personal service. And then afterwards, we went to this gorgeous sort of, it's not a hotel anymore, it's a wedding venue, but in my parents' hometown and where my nan lived. And it was like this glass room at the back that we were in, which was stunning. Food was amazing. And just as we were leaving, my nephew saw like a ball of like 5 or 6 white butterflies as we were leaving the crematorium. And then when we got to this glass like venue, we went outside and there was like 20 white butterflies all dancing around, and they literally danced around this glass venue all afternoon. And then just as we were leaving, we were there for about 3.5 hours. Just as we were leaving, a white feather fell down the side of the glass, kind of hovered at like eye height, and then like flew off. And I know some people don't believe in signs like that, but it just felt very poignant. And I'd also said to her in the day, I'd said out loud, Nan, can you stop sending me crows? Because every time we'd spoken about her, I'd heard crows crowing, and there was this like big incident the other day with loads of crows in a tree opposite us, which has never happened before. Just as my mum had texted me to say she'd just been to see her body and give her a last kiss. So yeah, it was bizarre, but also so kind of poignant and, I don't know, comforting, I guess. So yeah, really, really beautiful day. And then I drove back up to Leeds on Monday, and one of our friends had stayed over at ours to have Marley, so we didn't have any faffing to do with regard to like getting all his stuff back, getting in from anywhere. It was just a lot easier. So yeah, that was kind of happened then. So yeah, the last couple of weeks I've sort of been not really in the right headspace, a little bit out of action physically, and just thought I might as well wait to bring this to you when I've got good energy. I was going to record actually when I was off and poorly, but nobody needs to listen to that. First of all, I'd have been sniffing, which is gross, actually gives me the ick. And second of all, the energy would have just been off, and I just think I don't want to listen to anybody else. Like, I put a podcast on to get inspired and energized and to take inspiration from, and it wouldn't have been inspirational. So that's where I've been, and yeah, there's a few things that I was considering talking about today, but actually the one thing that has really come to light, and I think probably more so speaking to like family and being in the presence of family over the last few days or sort of last weekend, is we did a book in the book club a couple of months ago, and it was the Paul McKenna Power Manifesting book. I think I've mentioned it before because I'm sure there was something else in it that he'd said that I was referencing. But one of the things that really stuck with me, and one of the things that I would take from that book, and it's really difficult when you read a self-development book because there's so much gold in it, but generally speaking, you'll take like 1, maybe 2 ideas, and the rest of it you probably won't remember. But for me, this was such a poignant and like life-changing piece of advice, or I think it was even just a line. And he was talking about like the power of visualization and the power of manifesting and the power of like knowing what you want. And he basically said, people spend far too long focusing on what they don't want instead of what they do want. And the way that our minds and brains work and the way that energy works is you need to focus on what you do want. Now, that sounds really obvious, doesn't it? It's like, well, yeah, obviously I'm not going to focus on getting murdered or I don't know, being run over or getting an awful disease. And it's not, that isn't what he's saying. He's not saying don't focus on negative things all the time. But what he was referring to was, let's say, for instance, you are trying to get fit and healthy. Rather than saying, oh, I don't want to be out of breath going up the stairs anymore, and I don't want to be struggling to run after my children, and I don't want to be getting weight-related illnesses, you should focus on the things that you do want out of that process of getting fit and healthy. So I want to be able to run after my children and play with them. I want to be able to take flights of stairs with ease and not be out of breath. I want, well, not even not be out of breath, because that's focused on what you don't want, isn't it? It's so hard to do. And it's so easy to slip back into negative. But so it's focusing on the outcomes that you do want rather than the things that you're trying to get away from. And I always remember when I was in a really bad spot and my ex-husband had cheated on me, my first husband. And I was talking to well, it was my MD of the business I was working for at the time. And I was thinking about moving to Australia, and he was like, okay, well, look, obviously I'll support you if it's what you want, but why do you want to go? And I said, well, I want to get away from this feeling. I feel like there's nothing here for me now. I want to get away from having to, see him, hear him, whatever. And he said, Nikki, do you know what? You should always be running towards something rather than away from something. And I guess it's that carrot and stick thing, isn't it? Like, are people more motivated by worrying that they're not going to achieve something? Or are they more motivated by wanting to achieve something? So, like, are they more motivated by you saying, well, if you don't do this, you're not going to get this? Or by saying, well, this is what you can get if you do it? And I'd say most of the time, most people are carrot. There are the odd people I've come across that it's more stick motivated. And I know at university, for instance, I would leave all of my assignments and essays and even my dissertation right until the last minute, because the motivation came from not having something to hand in rather than wanting to do a good job. But I think as I've grown and matured and evolved, that definitely has changed. And I'm definitely more motivated by the things that I want and the things that are in reach if I just put a bit of work in. So it's about focusing on how you want to feel, what it is that you're trying to achieve, rather than what you're trying to leave behind or the things that you're trying to get away from. For those of you that are regular listeners to the show, or maybe you know me personally, you won't have been able to get away without hearing me talk about Simprove. Simprove is a scientifically backed, water-based probiotic drink. You drink it daily and it has been scientifically proven to help with things like bloating, IBS symptoms, pain. It was actually a dietitian friend of mine that introduced it to me last year, and I honestly wouldn't be without it now. It's helped with my energy, with my bloating, it's helped with my immune system, and also things like my skin. The list is honestly endless. Now, I have got a code for you. So if you'd like to try Simprove, you can get 50%, that's a massive 50% off your first 3 month subscription by going on to simprove.com and putting in the code Nikki50. That's NIKKI50, or clicking the link in the show notes. So let's use another example. Let's say, okay, an example that's literally live in my life at the moment is moving house. So we wrote a list of everything we wanted in our new house. Now, some of that was motivated by things that we wanted to get away from here. So, for instance, we overlook rented property here and they just don't really look after it. Landlord doesn't maintain it. The people that live in it don't give a shit. So one of the things that we really wanted was to be in a really nicely kept neighborhood where people looked after their property and it was owned by them. It was like a neighborhood or a estate or a community where it wasn't a lot of like council rented, it wasn't a lot of privately rented, and it wasn't flats, it was like houses. We wanted nature because where we are now there is nature, but there's not a lot of it. The two places that we can go to walk the dog that are kind of I guess like greenery and nature are quite small, so if there's other dogs there it can be a problem. So rather than saying like, oh, we don't want limited nature, or we don't want to live opposite people that rent, or we don't want to live opposite people that don't take care of their property, we don't want a house with just enough room for 2 offices and a bedroom, we put a list in place of everything that we did want. Because then not only does that make it easier to look for that property, but also when you're aligning with that feeling, it's so much more exciting and positive than thinking of all the negative stuff. And I tend to find that this happens a lot. I think I've spoken before about identity and creating the identity of the person that you want to become rather than what you're trying not to be, or creating an identity around something that is almost perceived to be negative. Now, I'm not putting this down as a negative thing, so bear with me. But for instance, I have come across a lot of people on social media that will create social media accounts around their trying to conceive journey. So trying for a baby, going through IVF. And whilst that in itself is a really positive thing, their accounts, and don't get me wrong, I think that we need realness, we need authenticity, we need people that are talking about the ups and downs of the journey, but they make it their whole identity. And it's almost like they don't know how to show up on social media without talking about that. And a lot of the time it is focusing on what they don't want. They don't want another failed pregnancy attempt. They don't want to start next year without being pregnant. That, you know, there's a lot of talk around where they don't want to be rather than what they do want. And it does end up becoming their whole personality, their whole identity. And the feeling and the energy around that is very different than somebody who is running an account or making it part of their journey, and it's all around the growth and the opportunity and the potential. And so when I was talking to my dad this weekend, obviously now my nan has passed, so that was my mum's mum, and my mum has been supporting her for probably like 11 or 12 years now. The first time she got ill, and then it's just gradually, as she's got older, naturally got worse and been a lot more difficult for her to come back from and bounce back from. She was like the woman with 9 lives. I think I've said this before. But it was a lot. Like, it was really, really intense. It was very, very time consuming. There was a lot going on for my mum. And even her birthday this year, I took her away for a spa weekend. And even then, like, her mind wasn't fully in it. So they haven't had a holiday for 5 years because she's not been able to switch off. She's not been able to just completely disconnect from what's going on at home, because she knows at any point she could get a call. In fact, it's funny, I even said to her at the weekend, can we change your ringtone? Because her ringtone gave me, like, it triggered me. It gave me almost like, you know, minor PTSD, because every time it rang, not every time, but 8 times out of 10, it would be either my nan who was distressed, or it would be the care home who were saying that she wasn't well, or it would be when she lived in kind of warden controlled housing, it would be one of the wardens saying, oh, she's pulled the cord to say she's fallen. Or there would be a lot of negativity associated with that ringtone. So we changed it. But anyway, this has now meant that now she's passed, that my mum and dad can have a holiday. And I was talking to my dad at the weekend. Now, my dad's somebody that, as he's got older, he's lost a lot of confidence. He says things like, oh, when you get to my age, you won't want to do a lot and you won't want to go places. I mean, he's 77. He'll be 78 this year. So maybe that does happen a bit, but I know plenty of 75, 80, even 85, 90-year-olds. One of my nan's friends that we were with at the funeral, she goes on cruises like every other month, and her husband has to use a wheelchair and they still go away. So it's a boundary and a restriction he's put on himself. And my mum's only 70, so she still wants to do stuff. So anyway, we were having this conversation and I was saying to him, like, what is it that you want now? Like, where do you want to go on holiday? Literally, the world is your oyster and you're going to have a bit of inheritance from Nan. So, and he was like, well, I don't want to sit on a plane for 4.5 hours. And I don't want somewhere that when we get there, we've got to walk far and to go to places. I don't want somewhere that's hilly because I can't walk very well. And I just stopped him and said, Dad, look, I get that you've got a list of things that are going to mean that there's certain places that you can't go. But let's talk about what you do want, because in talking about what you do want, we can look for that and we can have a better idea of the sorts of places where you potentially could go. It's such a negative mindset. And I've noticed with him, a lot of the conversations are very negative these days. They are talking about things that he doesn't like about people, or moaning about things, or creating dramas in his mind. And I think a lot of that is to do with retirement and not having his brain being busy. But I think also a lot of it is just he doesn't really have people in his life that will say to him, rein it in and let's change the tone. And I was doing that quite a lot this weekend. So we started chatting and I was like, well, why don't we look at Spain or Croatia or even Portugal, or there's, certain islands that maybe we've, not thought about, or maybe, France or Italy or somewhere that you can go that is within distance that is going to have a plethora of places that you can look at in terms of resorts. And it just changed the conversation. It changed the focus. It put it into a bit of a nicer mindset. And it also means then that you've got something to aim for. You've got something to focus on. And the energy around it is different. And that is the thing that matters in this. It's the energy that you are putting into things. It is the energy that you are using when you're thinking about stuff. And putting that negative spin on things is not putting you into the right energy and getting you excited, getting you feeling positive, getting you to a place where you want to achieve and you want to, maybe look for the holiday or look for the house or get excited to make the money so that you can move to that house or that area, or go to the gym to get fit so that you can run around after your kids if all you're thinking about is, oh, I don't want to be out of breath, and then you get into the gym and you're out of breath. Yes, you might be out of breath now, but if you're focusing on what you do want, chances are you're going to really put the wheels in motion and stick to it and be consistent, because you know that the outcome is on the other side of it rather than what you're running away from. If you've got nothing to aim for and no outcome that you're wanting from a positive perspective, it's harder to see when you've run away from something because you don't know where you're trying to land. So that was just something that really made me think this week, because I've had conversations about it. It had come up a few times with other people that I'd been chatting to. And I just think as well, with such a heavy and intense 6 months of the year, and this was sort of what I was referring to at the start of the podcast, I feel like we have had such an intense, emotionally intense, draining, heavy start to the year. And there's no getting away from that. Like my sister-in-law's diagnosis, the dog was really, really, really challenging. My nan passing away, work has been really, really difficult in terms of not only my mindset and focus, but the market in general. So there's been a lot of, I guess, real, challenge and intensity and heaviness. And I feel like I'm using, so it's my husband's 40th. As this goes out, it'll have been his 40th meal yesterday with our friends, and then on Wednesday it's his 40th birthday, and then we're going away for a few days. And I'm using that break and that trip as a fresh start, drawing a line underneath the first 6 months of the year. I'm not saying everything's going to be perfect from here on out. I know there's a lot of geopolitical tension, there's a lot of stuff going on, in the macro environment. I'm still grieving my nan. There's a lot of things that are happening that I have no control over, that are not positive. We're not going to put a positive spin on some of this stuff. They're just not. But I need to use it mentally as a mindset shift to just be like, yeah, I'm fucking done with feeling that way. And I've got to a point now where I have used a lot of emotional energy on the first part of the year, and now I want to just look forward. So we've got our house move to look forward to. I've changed my business model. I'm going to start practicing and training for what I want to move into with the breath work and the energy healing. And there's just a lot more positivity. I think the first half of this year, I really, really, really struggled to do what I've just been talking about and to look at what the outcomes that I did want. Although we did do that for Nan's funeral, me and my mum were like, how do we want people to feel? What do we want the day to be like? What do we want the energy to be like? How do we want to feel afterwards? And actually doing that really helped. But there has been things that we just can't do that with. My sister-in-law's diagnosis, we had to sit in the emotions of, this is fucking shit and it's not good, and nobody feels positively about it. But since we've had a few months to process it and she's doing amazingly, there's a lot more positive focus and positive language around that now. So the rest of this year, I really, really want to try and embody this and really want to try and focus on the outcomes that I do want, focus on how I want to finish the year. There's been a lot of learning around the first half of this year. There's been a lot of bonds made, and some of my friendships have solidified. Some of them have fallen away a little bit. Me and my mum feel like we've gone through something that's brought us close. Well, me and my whole family, but especially kind of me, mum, and my brother. There's a lot of good that's come out of it, but we had to ride the wave of emotion and intensity to get there. And it's still happening. Like I say, these things aren't book shut, chapter done, gone. But I feel like I need to really apply these rules and these sort of principles to be able to just focus on the next half of the year and make it, a really good one. So that's what I'm going to be doing. And hopefully there'll be more positivity with the podcast, less negativity to update you on. I'll always be real, I'll always be authentic, I'll always tell you what's going on, but I don't want to dwell on it too much. Like, I really don't. This needs to be somewhere that is thought-provoking and, dare I say, inspirational. And I'm just a girl that's sharing her thoughts, but from the messages that I get, I know that some of you really enjoy listening, and I want to make it a nice and positive experience. So that is me for this week. I hope that you got some value out of that. As always, would love you to rate and follow the show and share this episode with someone that you think might need it. If there's anyone in your life that you feel is struggling right now, or is a little bit down, or is going through something, or generally is just a little bit more of a negative thinker, share this with them. Get them to maybe, listen to it and chat through it with them, or just listen to it. Some people aren't on that self-development journey yet, but there's always a sort of a pivotal point for everyone. There's always that starting point. And maybe just sharing a podcast with one of your friends or family or someone in your life is that point that could start them off thinking about how they could, change their mindset. So I will leave that with you. I hope you all have a fantastic week, and I will see you again next Sunday. Thanks for listening. You can find us on Instagram at HelloSundayPod, or you can email us on hellosundaypod@outlook.com. Have a great week.